that, and my dad would, my dad is a trumpet player, and I had a band around Boston, and all these guys, Vardy, and all these people worked in my dad's big bands too. In fact, he was Jimmy Mover, and he and Jimmy Mosher would get confused. People would call him, and they'd say, "Where's your saxophone?" He'd say, "No, I'm Jimmy Mover, the trumpet player." Same thing would happen to Jimmy Mosher, Jimmy's father. They'd say, "Well, you're a trumpet player." He'd say, "No, no, you mean Jimmy Mover." And they had these confusion. But anyway, I went to hear D. Felice's band. I was only 15 and had just left Phil Woods' camp. So I didn't play yet. I mean, I played, but I didn't play at any level that anybody would, wasn't ready to be heard. But I went to hear those things. And there was a guy named Ed Moss there, a piano player, and Jimmy McGarry, a tenor player.
Yes, alto.
Alto. Well, I heard him on tenor, and he sounded the closest thing to Stan Getz I'd
Oh,
ever.
he was alto, great player.
Really?
He was, yeah, he was junky though, unfortunately. Yeah, great player. Jack, who was Jack, the bass player? Jack Prather, who's out on the West Coast now, was a good friend of mine at the time. Yeah, there was a club across the street from Mother called the Rainbow Room, where they brought in the real jazz, and I heard Slide Hampton's 11-piece band with Ron Carter, Pete LaRocca, Freddie Hubbard. Should I keep going?
Whoa.
You understand? All the top New York cats and Sly's arrangements right across the street. That was amazing. I'll never forget that. That sound and that band. It was, I forget who was playing piano.
It was the Rainbow Room, not the living room, the Rainbow Room. Right?
The Rainbow Room. It was on the hill right across from Mother's,
Oh.
Yeah. So it's funny that we followed each other around here.
Yeah, it is. That's funny. Now, also, now you mentioned two great bass players from Boston too. I'd like to talk a little bit about these guys because, again, we're talking about the Bob Dogans and the people that Jimmy Mosher. A lot of people that probably should have, had they gotten recognition, had Downbeat written about them, the world of jazz would be a little bit different.
Yeah.
And we both share that experience of having known these tremendous icons who were iconic to us and to but not to the world because of various things that I'm not qualified to talk about. Or I might be, but I don't want to. But anyway.
Yeah.
So, but let's talk. John Neves, I guess the closest he got to being, quote, known would be he's the bass player on Stan Getz's record called Focus, which I hadn't even known that. But
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, with Roy Haynes. He's the bass player on that record. And then a record recently came out of Getz at the Gate with Steve Kuhn and Roy Haynes and Neves.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and so you get to really hear
a whole Boston rhythm section.
Yeah, and Nev's time was just, I loved his time feeling. He just
well, unfortunately, the reason I could talk with some expertise on why John wasn't more well known. John played completely by ear. He didn't know a note one, not note one. Ooh. If you asked him to play a chorus of blues and F in front, you had to give him an F. Once he had the F, everything was easy after that. So he was playing with George Shearing. And he went to New York. When he went to New York, there were all those musicians who knew about music and knew the names of things and could read or blah, blah, blah. And I get this all the time with self-taught musicians. And they don't realize that they did it the right way. They learned it the right way. You know what I mean? They're self-taught. And you can always tell a self-taught musicians because they have such a distinct identity. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but he thought he didn't have it because he didn't know the names of things. And he went back to Boston and didn't leave again.
Huh. Huh. And that's interesting because his brother Paul.
Oh, he's great film.
Paul ended up in Puerto Rico, I guess I was told. And
oh, I got a story about that. Paul got me. I'm right. That's a big story. That's a long story. Paul got me a gig down there, but I'm not going to tell that one now.
Paul was, but he knew his harmony. I mean, Paul, you could talk about harmony with.
He could be, he was
Yeah,
knowledgeable.
because
But
I was.
John and John, he was he didn't really speak regular English, but you could almost understand what he was saying. I don't know what it was.
Well,
He had
one
a way
night,
of talking that if you listen to it with half an ear, you got the idea what he was talking about. It was, and he's the one who showed me how to play free at a club in Lynn. I'll never forget it.
really, huh.
Yep, yep. He said, Hal, let's do this. I said, okay. And that was my first time playing free.
He just
And
had
that,
to play and
yeah,
just.
yeah. He was great at it. He was great. He had all, he knew how to change, knew when to change, when to match, when to go against, all those elements of free playing,
Yeah, he was a very intuitive player. He was really.
Yeah, he was just fabulous. Yeah.
A funny guy. He was a big guy, right? He was an imposing figure.
I bet he wanted to be a baseball player. He could have been a professional baseball player.
I didn't know that about him.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
one night there was a club owner in Boston who didn't want to give me my money. He was holding back on the bread because I think somebody had been late and we'd started 15 minutes late, but we played a whole night and more. And John just happened to be was there, and he wasn't playing that night. He was just there to hang out, and he might have sat in and listened. And he heard this conversation with the club owner. The club owner was starting to threaten me, this and that. And John just stood up and said to the guy, "Pay the man." And the guy looked at John and paid us.
Yeah.
And, but the other one was the Dear Charlie LaChapelle.
Yes, sir.
It's Charlie was somebody we played a lot together, and
Oh, he was. He followed me around. He followed me around like a puppy dog. For some reason, he thought I was a tits, and I kept trying to tell him, "Look, man, you don't want to be like me, you know." You, but he wanted. For some reason he looked up to me like that, and
loved you. Yeah,
I wasn't a good influence on him. You know what I mean? And I didn't want him hanging around for me with that. I didn't want to be responsible for what happened to him. I kept telling him, man. Anyway, I got him on Jackie Paris's gig with Anne Marie. Now Micah Benny did the charts for that, and man, his charts were like, knuckle busters. I mean, key changes, tempo changes, and all that stuff. He learned the book by ear in 3 nights.
yeah, because Charlie was another one who didn't really know what he was doing either.
No.
He
learned. Yeah, he's totally self-taught. He learned to play totally by ear. He learned that book. I was still reading it, and he learned it by ear in 3 days, 3 nights. It's amazing. Yeah. And he was on my first album, the Gorilla Band.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I got a picture of him. I was looking through my gallery the other day, and I found that pictures of the guys from that record date.
Who else was on that record?
Billy Hart, Bill Goodwin, Bob Mann, Mike and Randy, another drummer also. I can't think of his name right now. Steve Haas.
Oh yeah.
I think
that band that you had with Mike and Randy and Billy Hart and Wayne Dockery. I used to go hear you guys at Sweet Basil. I just gotten back from Europe with Chet from my first trip to Europe. And, that was an interesting, it was a great band. And what was really interesting and great about it to me, one of the things was that Mike and Randy had just gotten involved with the Brecker Brothers productions and all that. So it was like a real chance for them to play some jazz because they weren't getting much of a chance. The other band was what it was, and it was a more commercial.
Well, that was the agreement we had, because I told them, I said, look, I want to start a band. I said, I'll supply the music and get the gigs and all that stuff, because you guys ain't playing, and your names will help the band. And they agreed, So that's how it started. But it got to be that the business people messed it up, man. We got to one gig in Jersey, and on the side outside it said the Brecker Brothers featuring Hal Galper. So they were using me to get to Mike and Randy, and I was out there with a broom knocking the stuff out, names off the sign, and I announced to the audience that the club had misrepresented it. If you want your money back, see the club on it. He went nuts over that. But that started to, it was people who were like mendacious, they were, creepy, and to try to use us. We just wanted to play.
Well, that was disappointing because that was actually, I mean, for me, that was the best that I ever heard Mike play. I mean, Mike played great all the time, but that was, I mean, both of the brothers, that band was on fire. And I didn't really go back and hear bands a lot. But that band I went to hear every Sunday that you played at Basel when you had that gig. And I said, oh, this band should be on the road. You could do part-time that, and they could have the Brecker Brothers, and that would be good. But, of course, it's always the business people that somebody I think.
Well, we did do a 10-day tour before the New Orleans recording, which was historic, especially because we were stuck in Bloomington, Indiana during the snowstorm of history. No trains, no planes. People came to the gig in snowshoes.
That would be difficult now.
Anyway, that was what's your next question?
Well, I was just then there was Gordon Brisker, who was a fine tenor player, and he told me he was on Woody Herman's band, and he was getting a lot of solos, and everything was going swimmingly, and then Sal Nistico showed up.
Uh-oh.
And Gordon said that was it. All of a sudden he did some arrangements, and and I guess he ended up in Australia. He made a couple of records, but he never really made an impact.
I've got a sextet. We played at the Turnpike.
Lenny's on the Turnpike.
Lenny's on a Turnpike with a quintet with him, and I don't remember who was on drums. Lenny Johnson, I think, was a New York drummer nobody seems to know about.
Well, Lenny became the guy of the teachers at Berkeley. He was like everybody studied with Lenny Johnson. Bobby Ward used to go to Lenny Johnson,
right?
For technical, tips.
Is that the right name?
Was Lenny Johnson the trumpet player, or wait, Lenny?
No, he was a.
No, there was a drummer.
I forgot who I was talking about.
We're talking about the drummer who was at Berkeley for a long time. I think
Alan Dawson.
No, Freddie. Wait a minute. I thought it was Freddie. Lenny Johnson. I thought was a trumpet player somehow.
Les somebody was teaching drums there, and his son plays good drums too. That's going too far back. That's mid-50s. I don't.
Well, mid-50s. Wasn't Berkeley originally called Schillinger House?
Yeah, they still had it was called Berkeley at the time, but they still had Joe Schillinger's picture in the lobby, and it looked like What Me Worry from Mad Magazine.
Alfred E. Newman.
Alfred E. Newman, right.
So when you went to Berkeley, was that kind of like one of the original? It hadn't been around for that long.
No, it hadn't. No, it was pretty new. It was filled with that's Korean War. It was filled with veterans,
right?
All older guys, And in Herb's class, we were stratified. The guys who needed the most help were in the front rows, and all the veterans were in the back row with the open bottles of vodka and the cigarettes and smoking joints, and answering every question and passing every test easily, and having a ball in the back row while everybody else in the front 3 rows of the class was trying to figure out what's going on. And Herb let us do that. That was a rowdy bunch. Yeah.
Did you ever study some Schillinger?
Yes, I did. Yes. It was very impactful on me. Very impactful. It made me realize there were good reasons why something sounded good and why they all sounded bad. And when I've realized that, you know, and also that was part of the contribution of forward motion, because Schillinger analysis is done from the end backwards. You go from the last note forward towards the beginning note to understand how you got there. So that's that, and that made me realize what was happening at the end was what, you know, what was important, you know. So that was a part of forward motion. Things were always in motion towards the end, you know. And then Madame Shaleff made a Bach on one of the pieces that I was playing, a Bach piece, starting on the second eighth note, going down to the first eighth note of the next bar. That was a forward motion phrase mark.
Ah,
That also contributed to it. It was in one of the elements that started cooking in there about forward motion.
so
Yeah,
you can
I had always
expanding and contracting, and
well, yeah, and I had always had a curiosity. I don't know, I didn't know anything about music, but I always had a curiosity about the nature of one of the bar. It seemed like a beat I really had to understand for some reason, and that's what got me into forward motion.
one of the bar,
Yeah,
the one.
the one.
Yeah.
There was something about it that I had to learn. You know, I don't know. I didn't know what it was at the time. It's totally naive. Which, you know, you were talking about the spiritual aspect of perhaps things coming from another source. I believe that the opposite. I believe we're the source of it all. That we already have everything in us. You know, for instance, people ask me about the big beat all the time. You know, how did you get it? Well, you're born with it, but it only develops if you're playing with other people who have the big beat, so they can bring it out of you. That's what it's all about. It takes a signal from the environment to make it active. So I always had a big beat. I didn't know it until I played with Cannonball, where it really got big, and it never got any smaller. It kept on getting bigger after that. You know.
Uh-huh. By
So
big beat, can you define that for those of who might be?
no.
Yeah, I mean, is there a way to define it?
No, it's just that way you can attack at any place on the in the scale, uh, any place between top and bottom. You could attack a beat. You have absolutely, it's that big. When I joined the band, you know how tight their ensembles were, right? Nat, and Cannon. They always played their ensembles in the same place on the beat, and I was always like a hair too soon, or for a year, or too late. Uh, it wasn't until Booker showed me something that Shirley Hawn showed him about playing bass, which was the hesitation beat, which is to hesitate just slightly before you hit every beat. And it adds a rhythmic impulse to it that's amazing. I've internalized that. I do everything that way now.
And that may be what some people, would call laying back.
No, it's so quick. It just changes your placement. Johnny Vidakovich describes it as somewhere between 2 and 3 of the hemiola.
Okay. Hemi-demigetic quavers, yes.
Jerry says it's 51% of the beat. That it's hilarious. Anyway, you can't hear the big beat. You listen to Jimmy Cobb on Kind of Blue. His beat is kind of thin, right? A little. It gives the impression. But where do you play with him? I finally got a chance to play with him when Nat came to Sweet Basil with his band after Cannon died. He was, Jimmy Cobb was playing, and I got a chance to sit in with him. And I was shocked at how big his beat was. You had to figure out where you wanted to hit stuff, you know. And in Cannon's band, it took me a year to figure out the hesitation and to get the exact placement of where they did this stuff. And once I got that, my beat started to grow and grow and grow, to the point where I could carry a band, you know. But I can't just. You're born with it. You're born with everything that happens. You just need stimulation from the external environment. I think all that stuff, I think the zone is where the meditation comes from. It's an internal process when you shut the forebrain down. That's not to me, it's scientific. It's not spiritual. I have a scientific bend more than a spiritual bend. I look, I always have, So, I don't believe in magic. yeah. So,
That's interesting.
anyway.
Yeah. Well, now there's the thing of when you talked about signaling, that was something I recently read. You had this thing of, which I liked, of how basically there's signals that we give each other when you're playing, and that usually a signal can't be interpreted if you only do it once.
Right.
That there's, and that reminds me of what Walter Davis Jr. told me about what Bird told him about confirmation. That I thought was kind of sort of related to this. I wanted to drop this by you, like confirmation. He said, Bird, because Walter was young. He said, Bird, I didn't know you were Catholic. Or he said, no, confirmation is a musical term,
Yeah.
and it's when you state an idea, you confirm it, and that makes you make sense. And he said confirmation, for example, the one it can be confirmed by just one rhythmic nuance. For instance, bop bop bop, because you get boo bip ba da da bop bop bop.
Yeah. Except that figure is hardly ever played correctly because it's one of Dizzy's crams. I can't sing it. I think that's it. You know what I mean? It's something. It's one of Dizzy's got a whole lot of those. He showed them to us one night on a train from Warsaw to Gdansk. All these little, where it's a piece of another tempo that he's throwing in there. So it might be 1, 2, 3, 4. Da da do ba ba da 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 da. There it is. Boo da do da 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 do da 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 do da 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 da. That's not singing it right either. I can't do it. No, that's that da. That one is not phrased. This if you can't phrase that right, you're not an authentic bebopper.
Yeah, right. Anyway, when you confirm an idea,
yes,
is what makes it make sense to you.
Yes, you do it's called AAB. You play an idea and confirm it, and then it takes off by itself.
Yeah, that's the idea, and so that's a kind of signaling that is frequently going on that I think helps to make music make sense.
Yep.
And and that's in all kinds of music. I mean, da 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 da. I mean, just
yep.
I mean, in that kind of thing. And then you talk about a thing called close comping. So, and you mentioned this thing of Moody jumping ahead on Lover and ignoring certain changes and just almost, it seems like playing the change that was the most essential, without having to play every change of the thing. But I don't understand it, so I'd rather have you explain it.
It's a harmonic forward motion. The only two people that I know can do it are Moody and Jerry Bergonzi. There's an assumption that everything has to light up vertically in this music, and it doesn't. You know what I'm saying?
Everything.
In other words, you would look. So you would think me playing a G minor 7 chord and him playing F sharp minor 7 chord at the same time, it would be clash, but it doesn't, as long as the flow of both of the changes have integrity. It's an old classical rule. Any two ideas can go against each other as long as they maintain their integrity.
I understand that. For instance, I tell people that too. I mean, because of the idea that, let's say if you've got the G minor C7th and you got F sharp minor B7th and you're heading to F minor, then one is 5 of 2 and one is 5 of 5. They both have relationship as secondary dominants to where they're headed. And
that's one way of looking at it. Yes.
Yeah, like on the blues when you go where we would arpeggiate the 3 minor and then the flat 3 minor, over the sixth dominant, for example, if the rhythm section is playing that, you can actually be playing A flat seventh, and the rhythm section be, or
Yeah.
playing, where the rhythm section's playing.
Well, what I'm saying is when it's Moody, what I'm saying, when Moody spelled it out ahead of time, it didn't clash because he was playing logical in lines. It was logical. Any two ideas can go against each other. It's a simple. Sam Rivers was the first one that elucidated it to me because his goal was to be able to play anything, anywhere, at any time.
Well, how did he?
And you
How did
make it
he
sound good.
elucidate that?
I played with him 6 years. I heard him do it every night.
So he'd elucidated musically.
Yes. You could hear, I just did a piece on him. There's a piece there about,
You said all music is in one key.
yeah,
That was one of my next questions.
key of C.
Had said that everything is in the key of C. Can you explain a little bit about that to me? Because that kind of that lost me a little bit.
Well, if you didn't use key signatures, everything would be in the key of C. And a lot of music today is written without key signatures.
Yeah, I mean, but every song does have a tonic.
Not necessarily.
Well, I mean, if it's tonal music, there's a tonic. I mean, that's why they call it tonal music, I think. That there's definitely a one. There's a do.
Well, yes, if you want to call it a do, but you can call it, Ray.
I mean, it may go to seven other keys around it, but it's still going to be. I mean, Lover is still going to be in the tonic key where it ends up in D flat or C, whatever key you're playing it in.
As long you're making it complicated, it's just as simple. As long as both lines are strong, they work. Period. The theory behind it is too complicated. You don't need it to understand the process. You just have to break your own bias against doing that. That's what the problem is, because you're not trained to play anything but the changes as they are. And Cannonball could do the same thing Sam did. He'd play, as a matter of fact, Walter Booker warned me when I joined the band. He said, Hal, you're going to be in between us and Cannon goes wherever he wants to, and you're going to have to find your place in between. And I told him, I said, that's not a problem. You're not paying me. Cannonball is. Wherever he goes, I go too,
Oh, now that brings up another thing I was thinking about too, where let's say people, horn players who use the rhythm section in different ways. Some, for instance, will listen to the rhythm section and kind of follow where you your hint, and others have sort of more of a play with a little more of a pre-agenda.
Well, that's the difference between close comping and orchestral comping. Yeah, that's the difference between the two. You stay away from them. I mentioned that in the signaling article. Joe Henderson was like that. I think I did play a little bit with Sonny. I think he didn't want you to match his stuff either.
Not particularly, yeah.
Yeah, even though he was spelling out changes exactly, he was my idol for change playing. But for line playing, he was my first idol. The only one who picked that up was David Baker. He said, "Hal, you were influenced by Sonny." I said, "Yeah, man, that's right."
Well,
anyway, that's an old trick. It really frees you up. There's another word for it called superimposition, which that could be called that, where you could superimpose anything over anything else as long as it maintains its integrity, as long as it's a strong idea. Superimposition frees you up from the changes. Thinking literally about the changes.
Superimposition. What are you superimposing?
I'm sorry?
So
you're superimposing different changes, and different scales over the scales that are designated by the chord symbol.
Right.
So,
okay.
So you could be playing what are thirds or fifths in another version of another chord. They change, but the same note it has a different quality in another key, but If you got an A flat on an A flat 7 and an A flat on a D major 7, that A flat has two different qualities,
Right.
right?
So that's the right. So
Yeah,
you're using the higher interval, like a note that might just be a melody note, as a higher interval of a chord, for example.
exactly.
You can have that, and that's what the one thing that Charlie Parker said about harmony. He said, you know that quote? They said, how did you find your style, Bird? And he said he was jamming in the Chili House with the guitar player, and he said, I found that, and this is the quote, by using the higher intervals of a chord as a melodic line and backing it with appropriately related changes, I could play what I've been hearing. I came alive. So the higher intervals of a chord, as a melodic line, like as part of the voice leading line, because I think it all comes down to voice leading in that way, for me.
That's right. Yeah.
And, that suddenly, if you just have the A flat as the root of A flat 7th, it's one thing. But if you put it as the plus 11 of D 7th,
D major 7.
or D major 7th, you can do it D major Lydian type of thing. Or you could say, you could use use it as a sus4 of an E flat minor.
Well, I give the example of like playing, say, a C major triad in your left hand intense, right? And then playing an A major 7 sharp 11 scale in your right hand. Now, there'll be no C in the scale, okay? But if you use the forward motion, rules of forward motion, so that the A, C sharp, and the E and the F sharp all fall on target beats and chord tones, you're spelling out your polytonic.
Right. It's like built on the 13th of the C7. It's kind of a chord. I would see that as a C dominant 7
It's a Phrygian
with a flat 9. Well, I would see, but the way I think, seeing that that A major scale, major 7 with the
the thing is, it remains consonant because you lined up the downbeats with the chord tones of the superimposed scale.
Okay, well, you got to stay another day.
Huh?
I gotta have you over for another evening, and we gotta stay up all night and talk about that one. um, but let's move on from there, because otherwise we're gonna be into some esoteric stuff that'll alienate everybody, except our dearest friends. Other piano players, I was thinking about. Well, there were a couple of things, Cats, I wanted to ask you about. Like we all have our contemporaries that we shed with, and have that kind of thing. Of course, in New York, we had Bradley's, which was sort of like the meeting ground for, among other people, piano players, but also all kinds of cats would be hanging out there, George Mraz and John Abercrombie and all of these people. And, I would see you now and then down there too. And did you, for instance, guys like Albert Daly, did you ever hang with Albert or get to?
Yeah, man, sure. Yeah, of course. I was hanging with all the cats. I didn't spend much. I played there originally when they had the Fender Rose, and then when Paul
Paul Desmond.
I can't think of his name, with Brubeck, the alto player.
Paul Desmond.
Paul Desmond died. That piano went there.
But before that, they had a regular. They had
a Fender Rose.
They had a Fender Rose.
I was playing. Yeah, I was playing there with Reggie Workman, duo, on a Fender Rose.
Then they had a real piano before.
I don't think so.
Really, I didn't know that. Oh, I'd have to check that. So you and guys like Albert Daly and John Hicks and Kirk Lightsey, you guys were all sort of the same.
I didn't get to hear them play that much, because I was looking at Ahmad. That's what I was looking for. Yeah.
Ahmad was a big influence on you.
Oh yeah, Lenny and Ahmad, and Jackie Bayed, really.
Now, did you get next to Jackie? Did you ever do some studying with Jackie, or?
I took 18 lessons with him. And,
Really?
and I went and looked once after I went and looked at my notebooks, and there was nothing in them. What he did, what he was doing, was swinging me. He was swinging me at every lesson, getting my mind going. And I'm teaching myself as I walk out the door. That's turned into my modus operandi.
Well, that's the best teacher. You know, they asked
Right.
Menuhin, who
Get
was
the mind going. Get the mind going. He understood. It was a matter of stimulating internal processes from the environment. That's what it takes. And he just got my imagination going. And I thought of a million things.
Well,
And he
the
wouldn't
best
get
teacher is the one who teaches you to teach yourself.
right. And he wouldn't give me another lesson after that. I begged him. I said, "Come on." He said, "No, you don't need it. You don't need it."
He told you no more.
Yeah.
That's funny. Now, Lenny Tristano, did you actually go to Lenny? Did you?
No, but I burned out 3 albums of lineup in East 32nd Street, and it took me decades to break. Still play long lines, sometimes too long. That was his influence on me.
What made you? I like didn't study with him because I was not afraid, but I just didn't want to be a part of a cult in a certain way. It was there was something cultish about some of the cats that were.
Yeah, the thing was, everybody that came study with Lenny in that group came out of there being true improvisers. They never repeated, never.
Yeah.
Lee never repeated. I played with him 9 months too. He never repeated.
Yeah, well, that's what you got from that.
Yeah, that's
that from Lee too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They really were great improvisers. True improvisers.
You ever get to play with Warren Marsh?
No, but Warren was another one, true improviser.
Yeah,
great player.
What was Rollins like? You had a chance to play with Sonny and.
Yeah, I played Carnegie Hall with him.
Really?
Yeah, it was great. He wanted me to play Fender piano. He had a Fender and a Steinway. It was great. Tony Williams, oh God, Bob Cranshaw, Ralph McDonald, Ryo Kawasaki on guitar. Is that the name? Great band. Now, here's the thing. Sonny didn't notice, but Sonny shaped my line playing, right?
Right, yeah.
So Sonny always soloed before me. So I had Sonny sound in my ear when it came to my solo. And I played some of the best lines of my life on my solos when he was done, because boy, he put my ear right in the right place. You know what I mean? I was hearing like he heard.
Uh-huh.
I was playing with the guy I've been copying, and I finally got a chance to hear him playing it live and a chance to try to duplicate it. Anyway, I played myself into a $200 bonus.
Really?
Yeah. So
how did that happen?
He came backstage and handed me 200 extra bucks, 2 extra $100 bills. So I got home and I told my wife, I said, he's going to call me in 3 days. I know it. He's going to call me for a gig. Sure enough, 3 days later, "Oh, Hal, would you like to join my band? I have 3 concerts coming up in stadiums and they pay $300 each in hotel." I said, "Sonny, I'm sorry. I cannot work for $300 a gig. I just can't do it." And I refused the gig. Because first of all, no one ever got famous playing with Sonny Rollins. He was just overwhelming. You know what I mean? They didn't see you. So I didn't think I was gain anything. And plus there was that old timey shit of keeping all the money and not paying the cats right, And I wasn't going to put Yeah. I've been through all that, already. That's cool. So, I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, man. I really can't do it. I don't think I missed anything by not doing it,
Well, that's interesting. One day, I used to, when I was in my teens, early 20s, I would call Konitz and Sonny, and sometimes Moody even, on the same day, and ask them the same question. If something was on my mind. And what was on my mind was how much does one feel as a horn player that you've got to dictate where the music's going, and the rhythm section should be there to follow you, or how much do you consider yourself? Do you want to react to the rhythm section? Because I noticed I was playing with Art Farmer, and I noticed one thing about Art that was similar to Chet in a certain way is that when they played, there was that little split second in there, fractions where they actually would listen to what the band was doing, and then what they played was reaction to what was going on in the rhythm section. They really would use the rhythm section.
Well, Phil was that way. When I met Phil, I was playing the house band out on the Turnpike gig, in Boston, and I was and the first thing that we got, I was chasing him all around every tune, everywhere he was going. I was an eighth note behind him, and he loved it. And that's the great thing. That was one of the greatest things about playing. He took stuff from the band all the time. He was really open to that. That was an attitude I really appreciated.
Where would you say somebody like Sonny Stitt was a little less open to that, or
no? Well, I played with Sonny for 2 weeks at Conley's, and I covered a recording of us playing at the concert at Father O'Connor's TV show. And it was funny. We're setting up for the first night, and he says, "Hey, boy, blues and F." So it's just he and I. We play 2 choruses, blues and F. I'm following everything he does. He says, "Okay, you got that's okay, boy." Okay, boy. That was my audition. He knew in 2 choruses I was okay. And basically, I followed him. It's I have to remember. I don't think I close comped him. I think he wanted you to lay down the time. I tell you, he kicked my butt for 2 weeks. That was the first time I realized he had a big beat, and he was kicking my butt tune after tune. I never had a saxophone player swing that hard as Sonny Stitt. What a lesson that was! Wow. It was great. 2 weeks with him. Amazing. Those guys who were doing singles, they were heroes, man. They were heroes. They were out in the road playing with some of the worst rhythm sections. I did that once. I'll never do that again. I went on and got rhythm sections in every town, Man, no wonder they were alcoholics. Jesus.
I did that for some years sometimes.
Oh, man, forget it. Yeah.
When Walter Davis died, and then I had Tony Castellano, we were a duo. I would sometimes just bring a piano player, because at least if we would either play duo, or if we were going to suffer a bad bass player and drummer, there was somebody to commiserate with. But then when I started to just be myself with rhythm sections, and you never knew what you were getting, it was that was probably, I understood those cats on a different level.
Yeah.
But the question I'd ask Sonny and those guys that day, like I remember Sonny told me that the rhythm section is there to support him. Their job is to help me sound good.
Right.
And that's what they're there for.
That's right. That's my attitude.
To suggest anything to me. I don't need their suggestion. He didn't actually say that, but it felt like, where Lee was like, I feel like I'm part of the band. He said, I want to feel.
Yeah. There's different attitudes. As a matter of fact, when the first time I played with JJ in Peabody, Lenny's on the Turnpike, I usually asked him at that stage, how do you like to be comped when I met one of these guys? And he said, don't worry, kid, just follow me.
Mm-hmm.
JJ Johnson. Don't worry, just follow me.
And you did.
That was it. That was my advice. His advice. You can't go wrong. Just follow me, he said. You can't go wrong. The masters, boy, the masters. They were all inspiring. Phil Still's inspiring me,
Yeah, and it's I remember that band. That was a lot of fun. But you guys sounded beautiful, and I remember Also, you play some nice duets with Konitz too.
Oh yeah. Well, 9 months at that club on up on East 96th Street. I got the poster for it. I
Not
have it.
Gregory.
I have it framed somewhere. I have the poster of that gig where we're advertised, where the club owner sang a couple of tunes with us.
Yeah, that was Gregory's.
Gregory's, right? We were there
Right.
9. We were there 9 months playing duo.
Yeah, I would sometimes sub for him over there, but not with you. We had different Dick Cats usually
Yeah.
with him.
Bobby, have you
Yeah,
got
I think we've definitely run through some very nice things, nice stories, found some common ground. It was wonderful again to talk to the great Hal Galper and realize what an extensive career you've had. And, we look forward to hearing more and more from Hal. Just he's writing a lot on Facebook these days. And um, any recording projects, anything's coming out, or anything you want us to know of upcoming performances, or something you want to?
No, I broke up my band up here, um, uh, and I'm not going to play with anybody unless they're on the same level as I am. I'm not going to play any gigs unless I'm playing with equals.
Yeah, I
So
think that's probably wise. And well, we certainly did cover a lot of ground today, and I really appreciate it, Hal.
well, Bob, it's always a pleasure, and I really had to know. I'm going to write that story about Slide. I really had to. It was too nice that we stayed there. That I stayed there at your house that
Yeah.
time. If it weren't for your friends, sometimes.
Oh yeah, that was. Yeah. Well, we were both in good hands. uh,
All right, man.
Thanks again,
I'm
Hal.
sure. Always a pleasure, man.
That's it. Thank you. And I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to On the Real Side. And I would like to remind you that if you could give us a like, it's greatly appreciated, more than you might realize. And you can become a subscriber. It costs nothing to become a subscriber, but it does help us more than you would know. Also, we would like to tell you about the project we have with my record with orchestra and strings. We're looking for funding, where if you want to contribute to that, Isaac Raz, a great arranger, has done 11 arrangements, and they're beautiful, beautiful charts. And we're trying to put real people in. He did a synthesized version, and we're hoping to get some money to put real humans
Yeah.
in this project.
Yeah.
And I won't go into detail here, but you can check us out on the project is called State of the Heart. Anyway, we thank you again. Thanks to Jessie Kaiser for her wonderful production, and many thanks to the great Hal Galper for joining us today. And God bless you, and Hal, may the fourths be with you.
May the Schwartz be with you.
May the Schwartz be with you.
I'll see you, man.